What's up, everybody? Welcome to RealGM Radio. I'm Wes Goldberg. Today, Keith Parrish and I are breaking down the Southwest Division. The Rockets are the clear favorites at the top, but it's pretty open after that. Most people, I think, are picking the Spurs to make a leap this season, but Keith and I make the case that you shouldn't overlook the Memphis Grizzlies. It's a fun, in-depth conversation. Let's jump in. All right, it's RealGM Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. The best way, as always, to support the show is to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on your podcast app to get this show every week. This is our Southwest Division preview. I'm here with Keith Parrish from the Fastbreak Breakfast and Grits and Grind podcast. Keith, we've known each other for a long time. Have not potted together a ton, I would say, but I've also, this is my fault because since I've taken over RealGM Radio over the last year, I feel like I've barely talked about this conference. Not that it doesn't deserve it. Like I talked about the Houston Rockets during the playoffs, a little bit of Wemby. I think we did a segment on Cooper Flagg and the Dallas Mavericks, but this is a fascinating conference for a lot of different reasons, especially after this offseason. So this is our chance. This is our chance to get into it. Southwest Division preview. I do think it's one of the more interesting conferences in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I am excited to talk about it. It's good to podcast with you again. I know you were on Fast Break Breakfast back in the day.
Yep.
But it's definitely been a little bit. Yeah, no, the Southwest is great. It's also the I think the most absurdly named division. It's
interesting.
Like the Southwest, if we're using a US map from like 1820. Yes, absolutely. A Tennessee team, a Louisiana team. So yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about it.
That's a great call. Our divisions are not, the divisions in the NBA are not named right. Just generally.
I think a lot of them have an argument where you're like, all right, I get it. But then you think, okay, there's the Southwestern flair of a city like San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Memphis, not so much. New Orleans, these cities are on the Mississippi River.
Right.
And again, that's not really considered what we would call Southwest anymore.
Right. This is like Louisiana Purchase times.
Yeah, I'm willing. I know New Orleans and Memphis both willing to go to the Eastern Conference, of course, if that ever became an option. But yeah.
I am very massive realignment when the NBA adds the Seattle and the Vegas teams. I am very pro massive realignment to the point that I would get rid of the East and the West Coast conferences, and I would just make it like the NFL or Major League Baseball with like a national and an American league and just mix them all up.
Yeah, there's a strong argument from, I know, fans of teams in the Southwest Division. There's a strong argument to eliminate conferences, period, where it's like it's so hard. And you look at the Eastern Conference and it's like, there's no one good in the Eastern. This is wild. And you have team building things that we'll get into, I'm sure, but you have a team like the Grizzlies, where if the Grizzlies were in the Eastern Conference, the Grizzlies, the team I cover on my show, Grits and Grinds, if the Grizzlies were in the Eastern Conference, like they wouldn't be trading Desmond Bane, I don't think. They'd be like, you know what?
We Eastern Conference, either in the Grit and Grind era, or at some point during the Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson, they would have been in the NBA Finals. I'm
just saying we're Grizzlies fans watching the Pacers make it to the finals.
Right.
And it's like, we won 48 games in the West, and everyone's like, the Grizzlies are horrible. Blow it up. And it's like, man, if we were in the East, we'd be competing, or they'd be competing for home court advantage. So I do think if they eventually do expansion, even though Adam Silver's been pumping the brakes, I guess that maybe they're not looking at it. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but eliminating conferences makes some sense. There are a lot of pods of geographically close cities where it's like Minnesota should be playing the Bulls.
Yes.
And,
Minnesota,
Cleveland,
Memphis,
and
New
Milwaukee
Orleans should be in the Eastern Conference.
But there are again, then it becomes hard a little bit. We start pairing off the teams.
Right.
You get to the Southeast, and then of course Miami's not that close to any of them outside of Orlando.
Right.
And so I don't know.
It's a little hop over the Gulf of Mexico to get over to New Orleans. It's not that bad, but
not bad.
It's not bad. Especially with a private jet. Before we get into the preview, who is Memphis's biggest basketball rival?
That's a great question. And a lot of it is just based off of playoff history.
Right.
I think we want to be rivals with New Orleans because it seems fun. There's a lot of similarities in the cities. Of course, they're two of the smallest markets in the NBA, but also you have that flair of the Mississippi River. You got a connection with blues music, and you got great food in each city. The NBA wanted it to happen years ago based on the Ja Morant and Zion Williamson drafts. And so there seemed like that would be a thing, but it's not really a thing. It just hasn't come into fruition. I would say, depending on the year, Grizzlies fans are like, our rival is the Clippers because we faced up with them so many times during the Lob City era, during the grit and grind era. Like the Thunder, there were so many matches with the Thunder where it's like we consider, the Thunder being a rival, but now the Thunder, we are not their peer as far as basketball quality. So the Grizzlies don't really have one. They really lack one, whether it's geographic or I don't know. Yeah, I didn't know who I would pick right now. I feel like they've all kind of there. It seemed like maybe the Timberwolves for a second there. Again, there was a playoff series matchup. There's the Anthony Edwards and Ja Morant, two young superstars who were big in the NBA's the kind of media focus where they're bringing these are maybe the next faces of the NBA. Ja, while he's still very popular online, doesn't seem to be as focused from the NBA's interest for obvious reasons. And so I don't know. Yeah, I'd have a hard
There was a minute there that maybe it could have been Golden State. Maybe it was Golden State for a minute there.
Yeah, and that's a good one too. And there's been a lot of Draymond Green, Memphis animosity, and of course there's a lot of postseason showdowns there as well. Yeah, I think that's a good call for the Warriors. For your Heat, do you still claim the Knicks? I mean, because it was historically the Knicks, but now
it's definitely a generational thing, right? So there's a generation that my dad is the Knicks. The Knicks are the biggest rival for the Heat. Nobody could pass it. And I was like, well, they haven't really, that rivalry hasn't mattered since the turn of the century. So if you ask a younger Heat fan, it would be the Boston Celtics, obviously, since the last sort of few years. They've met in the Eastern Conference Finals 3 separate times over the last basically half decade. But even if you grew up with the Big Three era Heat, you could look at the Indiana Pacers and say that's one of our biggest rivals. And so the Heat thing tends to be way more generational because it always feels like different Heat eras have different rivals. Like Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, their rival was the Knicks. Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, their rival was the Chicago Bulls and the Indiana Pacers. And then Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, their rival was the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a part of it also, it's the rest of the Heat's division. Kind of sorry. If the Hornets were better, maybe the Hornets would be a better rival. You think you could get an Atlanta thing going on? I mean, the Magic are in ascendancy right now. Maybe it heats up in the next couple of years where there's a Battle of Florida thing.
Orlando wants Miami to be their rival, and they're we're big rivals. We're people in Orlando say that, and people in Miami are who are you again?
There's a lot of mismatched fan bases. I think going back to the thing you said about the Warriors and the Grizzlies, there's the time where the Grizzlies are the Warriors are our rival, and Warriors fans are please.
Right. It was the Don Draper meme. Our
thing was why does Draymond and Klay Thompson keep talking about us?
Right.
If we don't mean anything to them, they sure talk a lot, but that's neither here nor there.
All right, let's just jump into this the Southwest here. So we're going to talk about the entire division. We're going to talk about some of the biggest moves that each of these teams made, who got better, who got worse, and then at the end we'll kind of make some predictions about which teams that we think will make the playoffs and how ultimately this division will finish at the end of the season. But let's just start with the number one question after this offseason, Keith. Who got better? I suppose we could start with the Houston Rockets because they obviously got better. They made arguably the biggest addition in the league this summer in adding Kevin Durant. They also add Clint Capella, Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Okogie. They lose Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green in that trade. Jock Landale, Cam Whitmore traded to Washington. But it goes back to Kevin Durant. Huge addition. Makes a ton of sense. Made a lot of basketball sense from the very beginning. It's why a lot of people kind of earmarked the Houston Rockets for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant bought in on the idea. He gets traded to Houston. He's going to help their offense right away. The Rockets actually didn't have a terrible offense last year. I feel like the Rockets sort of get lumped in with the Orlando Magic a little bit in terms of, really awesome defense. Their offense couldn't score at all. they were 12th in offensive rating last year. They weren't a bad offense. Now, a lot of that, like their best offense was off of missing shots, because a lot of that was like offensive rebounds, and then in the points in transition and stuff like that too. But, you know, you look at what they need to get in the playoffs. They needed half-court isolation scoring. We got to throw the ball to somebody, and that guy's got to go get a bucket for us. They were 24th in ISO scoring in the regular season, near the bottom of the league. But they were also top 10 in frequency. So in other words, they tried to score a lot in isolation, and they were really bad at it. Kevin Durant will allow them to continue to lean into that part of their offense, but unlock a good version of it, right? They'll continue to be able to do a lot of isolation scoring. They're not going to have to change their offense a ton, but obviously they're going to be a lot more efficient if it's Kevin Durant taking those shots.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I think the acquisition of Kevin Durant, it was a no-brainer, especially when you consider just the cost. Mm-hmm. And I, as an outsider, was very amused by just the reactions I saw of Rockets fans who seemingly were as excited to get rid of Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks as they were to acquire Kevin Durant. And like you say, the idea for this is postseason half-court basketball. They'd already had enough success in the regular season, and I think they could have continued at that same level. And when you point out that their offense wasn't that bad, it's fake offense. And I'm very familiar with this as a Grizzlies fan. It was the same Grizzlies formula. There's a common thread. There was a Steven Adams and a Dillon Brooks. And it's like, yeah, we force a ton of turnovers and we get all the offensive rebounds. And that's why our offensive numbers are good. And that's why we're mashing teams up in the regular season. And then there's the huge question of, well, what about the playoffs? I mean, it is a little bit funny that, you know, the whole trope of the playoffs slowing down and half-court possessions being maybe more important. I don't know if the league is slightly veering away after we see what the Pacers did and the Thunder did, where they're like, what if we actually just keep forcing all the turnovers and keep pressing all the way up into the NBA Finals and don't even need to shoot great numbers from the three-point line, and we can still win a title. Or the Pacers and be like, you know what? We don't have maybe that perfect isolation scorer like Halliburton for his gifts. It's not really that guy. Siakam does it in spurts, but he's not like the, hey, clear out. We can go 3 possessions in a row with Siakam just getting it at the elbow. Durant should fix that. Now, when you said they're obviously better, I don't know if it's my contrarianism wants to push back and just say, are we sure? Because they are losing a lot in Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks. And their roster, while the acquisition of Kevin Durant makes all the sense in the world, the rest of the roster, it's a little bit weird. They didn't actually get like guards. They have Fred VanVleet, but it's like when I was like putting together a depth chart, like I went to RealGM. I'm like, what does RealGM say the depth chart is? I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then I'm like, did they miss something? And I'm like, no. Like if Fred VanVleet misses a game, it's like, is Aaron Holiday and Reed Shepherd, like, are they starting? Like, what's going on? So, again, the acquisition of Kevin Durant, brilliant, and should elevate the postseason. And I guess also I'm saying, or when I think of them, they're coming from a pretty good spot. They're coming from a 52-win team. It was very good. When I say obviously better, I'm like, theoretically, like, I think a lot of that is baked in. Amin Thompson becoming Scottie Pippen. It's like, okay, if Amin Thompson does actually if he takes another leap forward, okay, I start to see it. But I'm still wondering who's going to make jump shots and like who's going to run the offense. And so those are my questions. While I still think this team is the team to beat in the Southwest Division, just so I don't get angry feedback from Rockets people, I think they're the team to beat in the Southwest. I'm just saying I have a lot of questions. Also, Dillon Brooks has been the king of the Southwest Division. This man has won 3 of the last 4 Southwest Division titles. The guy shows up to work every night. He plays. He brings an edge that the Rockets, I'm saying, might be the latest team to be like, wait a minute. That guy was holding it all together with his practice habits and his, what's the right word? His quirk. Whatever. His quirkiness, his intensity. I call
it snot factor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what losing the inefficient chucking of both Dillon and Jalen Green, where it's like, you know what, it kind of helped things out, and so I don't know what it's going to look like.
They were both innings eaters, right? And I think that kind of thing is really important in, what's the cat's name?
This is Dorothy. Dorothy was coming to knock over the camera, which is her hobby.
Okay. you
the cat, for the audio listeners, the cat has entered the chat.
Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, important innings eaters. And I'm glad you brought up Jalen Green because I feel like that's being treated as just sort of like it doesn't really matter because they got Kevin Durant. I think it matters. Jalen Green is good. Jalen Green is flawed, but he's not a bad player. And I feel like Jalen Green is one of those players who NBA Twitter is just like, nope, we're just going to make fun of this guy. We are going to collectively bully this guy. And I've mentioned this stat a million times on this show. When he scored 30 or more points, the Rockets were 12-1. They were unbeatable when Jalen Green got hot. And if every month of the year was March, Jalen Green would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I get it. Like, he does a lot of his work at the end of the regular season.
Yeah.
But that stuff still matters, and it really does matter in a Western Conference where you're still fighting for playoff positioning in March, right? Mm-hmm. So that stuff matters to me, and losing him as an on-ball creator, they are going to have to replace that. Rockets fans will tell you, well, we've got Reed Shepherd. He barely played last year. He's going to replace Jalen Green. Okay, probably. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see it. We don't know yet. Thompson is going to he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. When they drafted him, they sort of envisioned him as maybe a point guard one day or whatever. Okay, Amen. Prove it. He's going to have to do it too.
Yeah, I was going to weigh in on Reed Shepherd, where it's like, that's asking a lot of a guy who couldn't crack the rotation last year and couldn't crack the rotation when they were down bodies. And I wish I could say I saw more in Summer League where I'm like, okay, Reed is ready to do that, but they only played him a couple of games and he seemed to struggle against ball pressure in Summer League this year. So you're like, that's what you're depending on. And I mean, maybe it is Amen Thompson at the 2 or Kevin Durant going back to the Seattle days, sort of a shooting guard type thing. Like, I don't understand. But like, if the league is going to Twin Towers and if they're going to enforce their Twin Towers on other teams, well, they have more centers than maybe any other team. So
they added Capella. They've got Steven Adams. It looks like they're going to play the Twin Tower thing more. They're going to lean into it. They experimented with it in the second half of last season, fell in love with it, did it a bunch in the playoffs in their series. It sounds, based on their offseason moves, it looks like they're going to try to lean into that even more. And look, they're going to have to rely on Şengün to get all those Nikola Jokic comparisons. Like, he's going to have to do an impression of him where he'll probably have the highest usage rate of his career despite having Kevin Durant on the team now because Jalen Green isn't there. We'll see how much more they move the offense in Amen Thompson's direction, which I think they should have. I love Amen Thompson. I think that guy could be a star, but we'll see what they end up doing with it. Overall, I'm not super worried just because between Şengün, Durant, Amen Thompson, Fred VanVleet, there's just enough sizzle and creativity and just ways to make it work. And Ime Udoka is a really good head coach, and he'll figure out ways to make it work. And if their offense is simply one of the players throws it to Kevin Durant and everybody offensive rebounds again, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're nitpicking for a team that should be near the top of the Western Conference. Looking at the roster, the more I stare at it, it's like a pot roast where no one a potluck. It's like a potluck where no one communicated beforehand about what they were bringing.
Right.
And
everybody bought mac and cheese.
Yeah, everyone brought mac and cheese. And it's like you start building this roster, you're like, oh man, we got the best mac and cheese in the world in Kevin Durant. And then we have this other awesome mac and cheese. We're going to lock down Jabari Smith Jr. to a solid contract, and he's going to be here. We also still have all this other mac and cheese. And then like Steven Adams reasserted his value coming back from his injury in the postseason last year at the end of the regular season. They're like, oh, well, let's pay to keep him. And then it's like, man, we're just missing the main dish. I mean, maybe the analogy falls apart. Main dish can be Kevin Durant, but still, we're missing like a guard. We're missing a wing. We're missing people who guard wings. And someone's like, hey, I brought Dorian Finney-Smith. You're like, that's kind of more mac and cheese. And then at the very end, they're like, hey, Clint Capella was a great Rocket. He's a pretty solid NBA center. It's like, are you serious? How is Clint Capella going to get on the court? And so that part of it is weird, where I think I would be more over the moon for the Rockets if maybe the Dorian Finney-Smith was, I don't know, a shooting guard or a combo guard or something like that.
It doesn't have to be this big play. Even if they went out and just signed Cole Anthony, if they would have gotten him, I would have felt like, okay, that's somebody that can do something with the ball in his hands.
Well, why not Ty Jerome instead
Something
of
like
Clint
that.
Capella?
Right.
I mean, maybe we could talk. Let's talk, GMs. I mean, I'm not saying I don't know how long Zach Edey's going to be out, but let's I will say when we get to other teams like I don't know, the Pelicans and some of these rosters in the Southwest, I do feel like if we got to combine all the rosters and then resplit up teams, we could make more contenders than currently exist in this division. If that makes sense,
that would be a very fun exercise. Yeah, the Spurs have way too many guards. The Spurs
don't totally make sense. And it's
let's talk about the Spurs.
Okay.
So let's just jump right into them because I think they did get better. They added more talent. They add Luke Cornett, Kelly Olynyk, Lindy Waters III, who I think had a nice first half of the season last year with Golden State and then sort of fell out of the rotation. They obviously draft Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant. Both of them looked sensational in Vegas, I thought. They lose Chris Paul, Malachi Branham, Blake Wesley. They're better because of the additions, I think, net. Although I don't think we're talking enough about how big of a loss Chris Paul is. That guy played and started every game for them last year.
Yeah.
Coming off of Wemby's rookie year, we were like, just get this guy a point guard, somebody that could throw him the ball. They did, and then they got rid of him after a year for more scoring guards, right? De'Aaron Fox is a scoring guard. Dylan Harper, obviously, a scoring guard. I don't know how often he was a rookie last year. Why am I blanking? Stephon Castle will have the ball in his hands.
Rookie of the year, Wes.
Rookie, that's right. So we'll see we'll see how they get Wembanyama the ball again this year. I think the Fox Wemby pick and roll will be fine, but we only saw them for 5 games last season. So look, they're going to have a better record probably than they did last year as long as everybody's healthy. But I do think that the Chris Paul loss is more of a loss than I think people are giving it credit for.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm that broken up about Chris Paul being gone just because the team wasn't that good, but it does definitely raise the requirements for like what the other players are going to do and how the offense is going to be initiated. And we assume, well, De'Aaron Fox is just going to step into that role and be a big part of it. When I look at their team, and I love how you mentioned Lindy Waters before Dylan Harper, that's like peak NBA podcasting. That's great.
Right, that's
great,
what we do here.
Great job there. When I look at their team, like I am excited, of course, for Wemby and what this year 3 could look like. I mean, the steps he made last year were unbelievable. And if he is MVP caliber, which I think he easily could be, at the very least, first team All NBA consideration, if he plays all the games, which of course is a huge part of talking about the Spurs. Like, is Wemby at 65 games at least in the regular season to win those awards? I do think they have some things to, of course, sort out in the backcourt, even with no Chris Paul, figuring out how Stephen Castle fits in with Dylan Harper and with De'Aaron Fox. The one thing I actually like beyond Wemby when I look at the roster, I was just guessing about starters, and I don't know who it's going to be. I thought maybe Luke Cornett would start alongside Wemby in the front court, and then you have De'Aaron Fox, and then it's like, I don't know, probably Devin Vassell and maybe Steph Castle, maybe Harrison Barnes keeps that starting spot that he did so well in last year. But like, let's say Steph Castle starts, and then if your bench is like Keldon Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, Harrison Barnes, Dylan Harper, that's an elite bench. Like, to me, that looks like a team that goes deep into the playoffs bench because you have like the things ahead of them. Now, I do have questions about what the offense is going to look like. Like, all right, Mitch Johnson, step up now. Can we actually get some pick and rolls with Wemby? Can we maybe not just have him jacking threes the whole time? Like, what's that going to look like? But they have enough bodies. Like, Keldon Johnson is like a 6-man bench scorer. If Devin Vassell can maybe show a little more of the promise, I feel like he showed a couple of years ago. Like, they do have a deep enough squad where if Wemby elevates himself into that MVP conversation, where you're like, this supporting cast is ideal. And then I guess you want to talk about De'Aaron Fox. Is De'Aaron Fox like 2 years ago De'Aaron Fox?
Right.
Can he make a jump shot, De'Aaron Fox? Or a 3-pointer more specifically on those jump shots? And then that, I think, is what's going to elevate the Spurs into maybe winning this division.
This team needs to grow up. It's time to grow up. Like, I think the first couple of years of Wembanyama's career were great. It was preschool and kindergarten, and everybody's having fun, and Wembanyama's doing cartwheels all over the court and just kind of doing whatever he wants. and now it's time to sit in a desk and do the homework. And you mentioned before, like, is the offense going to be anything other than just give Wembanyama the ball and let him just do whatever he wants with it? We'll see. And that's sort of why, again, I went back to the Chris Paul point there. I'm not trying to say that no Chris Paul means that their offense is going to fail. It just means no Chris Paul means that this offense is going to clearly need a very clear structure. And we don't know if Mitch Johnson is going to instill that structure. It feels like it should be easy enough. De'Aaron Fox ran pick and roll over and over and over again with Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento. When that was working, they got to the playoffs in the Western Conference. If you basically just replace Sabonis with Victor Wembanyama and get De'Aaron Fox back at that, then it's not a hard leap to make in your mind to be like, okay, that team should be in the playoffs again. And I think the depth is fine. I do have a few questions about who fills out that wing spot. It feels like there's a lot of guys who could play center and power forward, and a lot of guys who could play the 1 and the 2. Not a ton of guys who I love playing the 3 outside of Vassell. But we'll see. I think that you could patch that stuff together, and when you've got Wembanyama and all 8 feet of him out there somewhere, that makes up for a lot of lacking in space. So you can play 3 guards at a time, and you can do a lot of creative things. And also, I agree with you. I think Kornet starts.
Yeah, I would say just also with their roster, the way it's built, and this is the huge benefit to having a superstar on a rookie scale contract. You do have all those theoretically movable pieces where let's package a Keldon Johnson and a Harrison Barnes and bring in somebody else or a player who plays a position maybe of more need. Let's use that Kelly Olynyk contract we picked up, and package it. So like they could move some things around if they see what they have. If they're like, oh, wow, we are clicking with De'Aaron Fox and Wemby. And, oh, by the way, Dylan Harper is looking amazing. We could possibly sell off Stephen Castle. Perhaps sell him at a high coming off that rookie year. Or like, you're like, hey, Jeremy Sohan doesn't actually, like, he's fun, but doesn't actually fit what we need. So like they do have a lot of optionality. It'll be interesting to see if they decide, we could make a splash and trade for somebody else. Or, I mean, again, Wemby's so young that like they could just take it easy, which honestly is why before when I talk about the Spurs, I wasn't that excited about De'Aaron Fox. I know it didn't cost him that much, but it's just like, you have Wemby, just maybe chill, see what happens. Like, see what happens for a while.
Right.
The team is so young. I don't know if you needed to go ahead and trade and get this guy. Like, you might could have waited and got him in free agency, but who knows? Like, so, but now he's locked down. And so the Spurs are good. Just a lot of questions kind of, and maybe it sorts itself out where like Keldon Johnson has a bounce back year or Vassell, one of those guys seizes the job. Like, we're just asking you to be better than Harrison Barnes, which like you weren't. Like, Harrison Barnes was great last year. So yeah, but they do have a lot of quality depth where a lot of these teams where I'm like, I wish the Rockets had a Keldon Johnson, just a guy, just like a random guy who can give you 20 some night, who can make some shots and take some pressure off of the defense if they're really packing everything in. And so, yeah, actually, I like where the Spurs are at, and it's just a big question of how much does Wemby take a bigger step forward, and then what's the guard situation like? How's that going to shake out?
And should mention that Carter Bryant can also play the 3 if he pops as a rookie.
Also, I don't think we mentioned. Did you mention Julian Champagnie? I adore him. Yes. He's awesome.
He's great.
Like, he's awesome.
Yep.
And he's the guy where it's like, hey, that might be your starting 3 right there. Sorry, everybody else, get in line. This guy he's one of those connective pieces. And maybe I'm going too deep down the NBA podcaster hole, but like, that's one of those guys where I'm like, no, he's a perfect 5th starter.
Right.
Like,
he's a younger Derek Jones Jr. It feels like he's like ready to kind of just step into that role. I think that this team could be one of the best 5 defenses in the league this year. If you've got Kornet and drop, and you've got Victor Wembanyama essentially playing the Giannis role, where he's just wreaking havoc wherever he wants, I love that for Wemby. And then obviously you could toggle into lineups with Wemby at the 5. You could play Kornet and drop. You could play Olynyk and drop, kind of, if you really want to do that. I like that they added bodies to make sure that Wemby isn't always having to play center. Like, he could play power forward. That's the way you utilize versatility, is you get versatile lineups. You get players who can kind of unlock different kinds of lineups. So if they're top 5-ish in defensive rating, and they're getting enough offense from De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, who is a 21-point-per-game scorer the first 2 years of his career, you get Fox, you get enough 3-point shooting from these other spots, Dylan Harper is a guy who maybe, goes off every few games, and you can get like a top 15 offense, then that's probably a playoff team in the West. But I don't want to get to our predictions too soon. Let's go to the Pelicans.
Yeah.
I hated their offseason.
Yeah.
I do think they got better. Just kind of sticking to our outline here.
Well, what's the standard that we're holding them to? I mean, just based on last year? Because last year, I mean, anything's better.
Correct. That's it.
Yeah, sure.
100%. Okay. Yep. That's where I'm at. I hated their offseason. I think they'll win more games this year. Really quick recap. They add Jordan Poole in that weird CJ McCollum trade. They add Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, Kevon Looney. They draft Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. They lose CJ McCollum in that trade. They trade away Kelly Olynyk, and they technically lose Bruce Brown, who's only there for like 23 games or something like that. So that was essentially the offseason. Zion Williamson played 30 games last year. It just is, if Zion plays more and if they're relatively more healthy, then they'll probably be better. They did add talent when you kind of take all of their moves in totality. They did add talent. How that talent fits together, who knows? Like, this is another one of those teams. It's like, wow, it feels like you have a lot of this. You have a ton of power forwards, and you don't really have much of anything else. Yeah,
I mean, they're a weird squad.
Oh, yeah.
And when you get into the way they acquired their talent, that seems to be where everyone gets the most upset talking about their off season. I mean, just thinking about them.
I called the Joe DeMar that deal to trade away an unprotected 2026 pick to move up to get Derek Queen. Yeah. I said it's worse than the Luka trade.
I mean, no, because that trade didn't like kill business in a major American city. Like when we take it outside of the actual basketball court, or it's like you lowered the value of a franchise in the NBA. Do you know how hard that is?
It's impossible to do that for New Orleans. It doesn't get lower.
Right. Yeah. It is. We can nitpick that comparison. I think when you think about it being the fact that the Bucks pick was in it too is like that part's it is kind of wild. If we look at their squad and imagine good luck with health, and this is not even including DeJounte Murray returning from the Achilles tear, they're intriguing. I don't know how it really makes a ton of sense. Also, they were kind of bad even when they had their better players together last year, which was so strange because they were good 2 years ago.
Right.
Trey Murphy's a guy who I adore, and he might be special. And if I'm the Rockets, I might trade all my matching salary if I could, and any picks that weren't bolted down. Like, that's a guy where I'm like, you know what? He can play the two. I'm fine with that. But like when you think about Zion and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, you're like, okay, that's a thing. That's a pretty solid starting point. And then you're like, Jordan Poole's a scorer. I guess he's starting. And then when you go beyond that, it just gets weird. Where you're like, you don't actually have a point guard outside of Jose Alvarado. Is he starting? I mean, is Jordan Poole just going to be the nominal point guard? And then, you drafted a shoot first guy and Fears, and Jordan Hawkins was like, oh, yay, they traded CJ McCollum. Oh, no, we got Jordan Poole and another guy drafted higher than me who's going to play my same position of chucking shots. And in the front court, where it's like Yves Missy was doing weird stuff at Summer League, and he had a promising rookie season, but it's like, who's going to give him? He needs someone just to throw him the lobs. Is the ball in Zion's hands, and is he going to throw the lobs to Yves?
I think it's a lot of point Zion. The problem that you get into when you tilt your offense all the way into point Zion, which Willie Green has talked about wanting to do, is he gets hurt and the entire offense goes to shit. Yeah. And that's it. And that's the part that I can't square. It's like, okay, well, Zion he can run our offense, but then when he misses games, we're just handing the ball to Jordan Poole and letting him do what he did in Washington, which was turn the ball over a lot and make bad decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this might be too swayed by fantasy basketball, I feel like Jordan Poole was like pretty all right last year. And
He's
again, maybe it's just like, man, he really bumped his steals category last year. That's helping me out a lot. So like, maybe again, another change of scenery for Jordan Poole, but like, it's just a weird squad. And they seem to be, as a franchise, a little bit cursed with just injury luck year over year. And I mean, Zion, obviously, maybe the forefront of that. So I don't even know what expectations are. I would love to know internally, like if it's Joe Dumars or Troy Weaver, like the people making the basketball decisions, like what are their expectations for this year? Do they look at this team and say,
well, they traded their pick next year.
Right.
So
but
the expectation is to be a playoff
Are they
team,
saying we're going to win 40, 45 games?
By trading your pick, you are insinuating that. I think absolutely. And
I mean, maybe what's the do we have a DeJounte Murray injury timeline? I think it was in January or something last year.
Yeah. So maybe he comes back mid-season.
Yeah, maybe it's back in January or the All-Star break.
And then it's like
30
okay,
games
are
left.
we starting DeJounte Murray with Jordan Poole? There's certain lineups where I'm like, is Sadiq Bey playing the two? And I think the Sadiq Bey acquisition actually has the potential to be pretty good if he could just stay healthy. He's another one of those guys.
It's a buy low, although it wasn't a buy low, but it's like his contract is so low.
Yeah.
You know, like I kind of like Sadiq Bey as like, what's the right way to couch that phrase? If he's going to be your 9th best player, I like that. All right. You know, like he's the guy who competes, at least he competes more on offense than defense by a long stretch. Yeah. Also, easily the highest career high among all Pelicans. I'm pretty sure he's got a 50-pointer in his
Zion has never done that.
Zion's never gone for 50.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't think Jordan Poole's never got. Yeah. Sadiq Bey, the only Pelican to score 50 points in an NBA basketball game. That's got to be worth something.
Maybe that's why they traded. They're like, he could probably do this every night. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, if you're the Pelicans front office and you're like, we're going to trade that 2026 pick, we got to go get Derek Queen, which again makes so little sense to me, because if he was that valuable, then you could have just drafted him at 6 instead of having to move a pick. If you thought he was going to be the next best center in the league or whatever, like I can't figure that part of it out, but whatever. Let's just imagine we're the Pelicans front office. We have totally talked ourselves into us being a playoff team for sure. We feel really good about it. I'm trying to figure out why. How do I see it? Because Jordan Poole, I don't dislike Jordan Poole as a basketball player, but I also understand that he's on the musician schedule, right? It's an every other year thing. He comes out with an album every 2 years. Okay. 1 year on, 1 year off. Last year was an on year for Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole came out with an album last year. He's taken this year off. So I don't, that makes me nervous. Zion's health obviously makes me nervous, but let's just say Zion plays 65 games.
What if Zion's on the musician schedule? Maybe this is an album year for Zion.
Maybe, yeah. That's maybe they timed this out perfect. They got dueling musicians, dueling banjos here. So maybe Zion is on an on year. Maybe he's coming out with an album this year and he plays 65 plus games. And if he does that, they could just be awesome, because Zion could just carry him. And Zion is doing all the, I've talked about this, but he's on my all aha moment team. Just every summer there seems to be an aha moment with Zion Williamson. He's just like, well, now I'm not eating gluten. Now it's like I'm working out in Texas, like nonstop. I'm doing 2 days. It's like, all right, cool. Yeah. Maybe it works. So if Zion's there, then you could see how all this stuff kind of clicks into place. There is a ton of players on this team that you kind of like. So there's not going to be a ton of lineups out there where you're just like, that guy shouldn't be on the court.
I think my hesitation with this Pelicans team, where again, if they're all healthy, you could talk yourself into them being competitive. I can't do what you just kind of did, which is envision a scenario where they're really good. Like even if Zion's healthy, I'm like, but who are outside of Trey Murphy, who are the complementary pieces where you're like, if Zion's playing at a first team all NBA level, who are the complementary pieces that you fit around him? Like Jordan Poole isn't really the guy I would put with him.
Unless you think Zion is Draymond, and not in an off the court sense, more of an on the court sense for Jordan Poole, where now we can let Poole take more off the catch shots the way that when it was the pool party lineups in the 2022 run. I'm just trying to figure out what the Pelicans are thinking here. I'm trying to talk myself into it the way that they've clearly talked themselves into this.
I mean, if Derek Queen is good and we have like a Derek Queen Zion front court and like Yves Missy is just back to some kind of bench lob catching role.
Mm-hmm.
Even then I'm like
shooting with Poole.
I think the Zion at the 5, if you can go Herb at the 3, if you could get enough rebounding from someone at the 3, then maybe, I don't know, could you play? Trying to piece together a 5-man lineup where I'm like, yes, that could win. If everything goes right, you could win 50 games. I just don't see it with this Pelicans roster. And so I don't know what the long-term, I think what are the goals? Are you trying to get Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears minutes this year? Because that's going to hurt you, I think, when it comes to the on-court product as far as, and your draft pick, which you gave away. And so I don't know. Also, there's no like table setter point guard. And maybe I'm just stuck in the past, not being able to envision.
It's a concern. I don't know who makes the good decisions on the good decisions on this team. I don't know. Like, if you don't necessarily need to have that table setting point guard if there's another player on your team who can make those good decisions and be reliable. And I just don't see that player on the roster.
It's like I'm not even talking about like a Brevin Knight deferential. Like those don't exist anymore. Right. I just mean literally who can dribble on your team. And it's not that many guys. When you're like, is Zion bringing the ball up when Jordan Poole's not? Like, there's a lot of guys you literally don't even want the ball in their hands. And it seems like with all these mouths to feed, with these shooters, with these me first players, guys who don't, traditionally set other guys up, you need just one guy or a couple of guys beyond. I'm not ignoring you, Jose Alvarado. Right. I just don't think that's the role. It might be a little bit bigger. Like
he's one of those guys who ends up playing more because the Pelicans need somebody to play that role, and now he's actually playing over a better player. It kind of feels like that's where this roster.
He also can't stay on the court,
right?
And he's just another. Maybe he's also suffering from whatever New Orleans voodoo curse exists out there. He's another one of those guys who's just always a little bit banged up. But again, he's a bench guy. He's not like a starter. He's a popular, fun bench guy to come in and get some quirky steals and make some big shots and be fun. He's not the guy you're hitching your wagon to be like, let's go win a playoff series.
This is one of the most confusing teams in the league. I kind of just wrote that they got better. Who knows? Here's another confusing team I can't figure out. The Mavericks. If we're trying to decide whether or not they got better or worse, I guess it's sort of the same question of, well, since when?
Yeah, since the Kyrie injury? If it's the Kyrie injury, okay.
Since this time last year, they got worse because they lost Kyrie and they lost Luka. But since the end of last season, you could argue that they got better because they add Cooper Flagg and D'Angelo Russell can play some minutes for you. He's an innings eater in the regular season now. They lose Spencer Dinwiddie in the offseason. That's really it. When you look at the Mavericks, the Kyrie injury, when does he come back? It doesn't sound like they're going to rush him back. I would never bet on Kyrie coming back sooner rather than later. He tends to take his time with injuries. Yeah. Anthony Davis, I guess his cornea separated from his face or something. Some sort of injury there that he had surgery for. So
I don't think it's separated from his face, Wes.
I don't know what it is. They said cornea separation. I don't know what that means.
Okay. It's just separated from the parts of the eye. I think
it's part of your face.
If it's leaving the face, we have a problem.
He'll wear an eye patch beneath the unibrow. He has as many eyebrows as eyeballs now. So I don't know. I don't know if the Mavs got better or worse. You know what? I don't want to stick to the structure too much because when we're talking about Dallas, it's just all up in the air. To me, it's a similar problem to New Orleans in that who's running the offense here? And specifically with Dallas, who's getting to the basket? Like, D'Lo's not a go-to-the-basket guy. He replaces Kyrie in position. Kyrie gets to the rim, can kick out the shooters, all that stuff. D'Lo is more of like, I'm going to move kind of east-west and sort of slide my way into the mid-range-ish area, and then I'm probably going to take a shot from that kind of spot. Anthony Davis is not a guy who's going to drive. Nobody else on the roster is really doing it. And so I go back to the guy they drafted number 1 overall in Cooper Flagg, and I'm just looking at him on a team with a lot of experienced talent, and I still think, oh, you're going to have to do all of this. Like, I think Cooper Flagg as a rookie is going to have quite a bit of responsibility in terms of what he means to that offense.
Cooper Flagg starts for sure.
I think he has to.
Okay.
I don't know where. It's like he might, like Kevin Durant, he might be playing the 2.
Yeah, they're the strangest team when it comes to, again, they're just like the Rockets. I love it. We could get Rockets Mavericks rivalry games where they just agree before the game. They're like, hey, just each team gets one guard. Okay, so
right.
we'll play D'Angelo. Maybe it'll be a Jaden Hardy night, you know. But like these squads don't have guards, and it's like that's wild to even try that. It's so weird. I mean, after they got unbelievably lucky with the Cooper Flagg lottery thing, after they were given this gift from the basketball gods,
fortune favors the bold,
to rebuild their fan base after the Doncic debacle. Everything they did since then, it's not like bad. I think it's a little bit confusing just because the roster that was left over after the Doncic trade was a roster built for Luka Doncic. You know, like you have all these lob catchers on the squad. It was the setup for like Luka's like, these are the guys I like, and this is how we do it. So now when they won Cooper Flagg, it's like, this is not who's the team built around. And it seems to be kind of not, maybe it's built around defense because defense, quote unquote, wins championships, according to the decision makers. Like, it's weird to me that this offseason they didn't pivot into moving some of those other bodies. Or maybe they will once they see what they have in the regular season. And I'm not even like strongly arguing that you should like trade Anthony Davis and start over, which that's one argument you hear a lot. You're like, oh, you got Cooper Flagg. Now let's just build organically around Flagg. You could trade Davis for a massive haul.
Yep.
Like, I even understand keeping Anthony Davis because, frankly, Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg together sounds incredible. That sounds amazing. As a basketball fan, I want to see that. But just when you start doing the depth chart exercise, you start looking at the players and you're like, whoa, they got, like, you don't need Lively and Gafford.
Right. It's another one of those teams where I like a lot of the players. And if you just kind of take a snapshot of the talent on the team in your mind, you're like, Mavericks could make the playoffs. And then you look at how this is all going to fit together and you're like, are the Mavericks going to win any games? Are they going to win 30 games?
PJ Washington, like, he's still here, and Najee Marshall is good, and he's still here, and like these guys all play the same position. And then it's like Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson can't guard anybody. He's essentially a 4 now.
He's still on the team. Yeah.
So it's like, I don't get it. I mean, getting D'Angelo Russell for nothing is great. Like that's good. And I mean, maybe they're are they hoping on like the Brandon Williams late season surge? Is he a guy? But it's just a weird squad. Where it's
when you listen to like Mavericks podcasts right now, the whole idea of if Jaden Hardy and Brandon Williams can pop, that really makes a difference for us. That comes up way too early in the podcast for me to be comfortable for.
That is the biggest cliche for all team podcasters.
Right.
Where if I'm doing my Grizzlies show, I'm like, guys, if Cam Spencer and Vince Williams really pop this year, you know, like that's the thing.
Buying up all the Vince Williams.
Everyone can do it. We haven't even gotten to the Grizzlies yet, but like that's the thing. Every team has them.
Every team has them.
We're like, guys, if Drew Smith really pops this year.
And the question is, how soon in the show does that come up when you're discussing your team's chances? Right? If it comes up later, it's like if it's like and if this happens, then hey. But if that's coming up in the first 10 minutes, I think you have a problem. Yeah. And for Dallas, it feels like that keeps coming up in the first 10 minutes. So I don't know. To me, Kyrie is so important to this team in terms of just having a guy who could facilitate and create. And they sign him to the 3-year contract. They bring him back. I know he's been awesome since he got to Dallas, but he's hurt. It's a major injury. What does he look like when it comes back? It just feels like there's a lot of eggs in that Kyrie Irving basket, and that makes me a little queasy. But again, if you're the Mavericks, maybe you don't really care. I know that they keep talking about like short window, we're title window right now, competing for championship. Maybe at the end of the day, what really matters is just getting Cooper Flagg as many reps as possible with a pretty solid defense and just be like, all right, go to town, Cooper Flagg. Figure this out, growing pains, etc., and do all that. So we talked about every team except for your Memphis Grizzlies, and they are the only team that I wrote down as having gotten worse. And I don't even know how much worse they got.
Oh, okay. Sing me this song. Tell me everything.
So they lose Desmond Bane. That's the big trade.
Yeah.
They also lose Luke Kennard, Jay Huff. They add Ty Jerome, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jock Landale, and they draft Cedric Coward. they technically got worse. I don't think they got that much worse. I love Ty Jerome for this Grizzlies team. He is the exact kind of point guard who just works in Memphis, always. He is just like a no-nonsense, low-maintenance, get-the-job-done point guard, a Tyus Jones, a guy like that. Those guys always just work. He could play with Ja Morant. He can come in out when Ja Morant misses games. He can come in and run your offense a little bit. Those players just seem to work. I think KCP will have a bounce-back year. He was in a very tough situation for him in Orlando. He's not going to be Desmond Bane.
Why was he in a tough situation in Orlando?
I think he was asked to do too much.
Okay. They needed him to knock down shots, and he did not.
Right. I think he
was playing alongside a couple really good. I mean, I know Wagner and Banchero missed a lot of time. Suggs missed a lot of time.
Yeah. It was just it just felt like there was a lot on him. There was nobody to create a shot for him. He plays well with LeBron. He plays well with Jokic. And in Memphis, if Ja Morant's out there, Ja will be able to create shots for KCP. So, Kennard wasn't really part of the rotation. Jay Huff was kind of out of it by the end of the year.
Well, I mean, I don't care about the deeper cuts. Yeah, who cares? Luke Kennard, Jay Huff, who cares? No, it's Desmond Bane was awesome.
You're replacing Bane with Ty Jerome and KCP.
Yeah. In the aggregate, you're trying to say Ty Jerome, who was let go for Sam Merrill, and KCP, who could not make a jump shot last year.
So you think Memphis got a lot worse then?
Okay, maybe I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't know. It's hard to say. They have removed themselves from, I think, the interesting tier of NBA teams. Like, despite the fact that they ended the year on a swoon, which is all anyone remembers. Like they were horrible. They trade deadline. They salaried up to Marcus Smart with a first-round pick. They got rid of Jake LaRavia, and they were having weird stuff going on behind the scenes. It seemed like they started redoing the offense again. Like last year, they put in that wheel system with like the no picks, the no screens, and then Ja Morant maybe didn't love it, and then they started doing it a little bit differently. Jaren Jackson Jr. was way less effective near the end of the year because they were doing different kind of things with Ja Morant and Zach Edey. Ja was happy, but the team was much worse. And then the basketball, and so the season ends terribly. You forget that the Grizzlies, I think, had like the 6th best net rating in the NBA last year. They were one of a handful of, it was
top
like them
most of the year.
Yeah, they were top 10 in offense and defense like all year. It was like them and the Thunder and the Cavs and the Celtics.
Yep.
So you forget it all because the season ended so poorly, and then you're down by. I've blocked out, totally erased Game 1 against the Thunder. I know we were losing by a lot. I don't know the exact number anymore.
You just remember the one that they almost won.
Them coming to grips with the fact that they weren't close to the Thunder, it was good. As a Grizzlies fan and podcaster, I'm like, thank you. I've been saying this for a while. Like they did not maximize the final years of their big three of Jaren and Ja and Desmond Bane.
If you poll every fan of every team in the league, and say for the most, and there's definitely exceptions, but hey, you can get 4 first-round picks for your third best player. Would you do it? Most fan bases would say yes, right? Oklahoma City would not. Certain teams would not. Most, I would say 80% of NBA fan bases would say, yep, 4 first-round picks. That is literally an offer we cannot refuse.
And I completely understand it. And the most convincing argument that I tell myself, the way that like I make the most peace with losing Desmond Bane, is the whole argument where I'm like, okay, if they literally are never going to pay the tax, like if they're literally been like, oh, we can't afford to add any more good players. And if that's the case, and if they were sort of capped out at like making the play in, okay, if my option is we make the play in with Desmond Bane or we make the play in with 4 first-round picks, okay, give me the 4 first-round picks. I get it. But I feel like that's a sad place to be as an NBA fan, where you're like, oh, we're actually just not going to pay to compete. So we have to try to compete with this other way, with the acquisition of younger, cheaper talent, which again is what everyone's going to. I mean, the Celtics have to blow up their squad or whatever. And if that's where we're going,
complaint. And it's a fair concern. I guess the concern is, are we ever going to pay for a good team, or are we just going, or are we going to look at a team like Indiana that already decided, yes, we've got Halliburton, we've got Siakam, and then we've got not max players filling out the rest of the roster. And that might be just where it's going. And then I think Memphis said, we've got Ja, we got Jaren. We can't have 3 guys on maxes. Yeah, we can only have 2. And they didn't have to trade one of their 2 best players to get off of one of them.
And that's 100% what their decision was.
Okay.
But then you have the other part of it. Like clearly Ja Morant is the Grizzlies' best player in a vacuum. But like
he's out there.
Yeah, when he's out there and healthy. And that becomes this thing where like this is not playing 2K. There's more to it. And there's also more to it as far as marketing wise. This is the thing that Nico Harrison just apparently didn't comprehend at all.
Didn't hold a meeting with the marketing team.
Yeah, there's a relationship between the entire city and the economics of the entire city and Luka Doncic in the same situation with Ja Morant in Memphis. He's the most popular player in Grizzlies franchise history by a mile and the most marketable player in franchise history by a mile. But if you wanted a more dependable player, it would have been easier theoretically to build probably a team around, let's have Jared and let's have Desmond Bane and let's go try to get a third guy.
Right.
Like that's not even a thing teams can do.
Right.
Because you have your meal ticket is Ja Morant.
Right.
And you have to just go under the hand you were dealt is we just have to get Ja Morant right and build a team around Ja Morant. And if Ja Morant's healthy, we're going to be good. We're going to be a playoff team. We're going to be competitive. And that's probably our best route. It's a low probability any team wins the NBA title. Our most likely way of doing that is keeping Ja, having him play at the peak of his powers, and then you hit a home run with a Cedric Coward in the draft or whoever is the next draft pick, or you do like the Pacers and you hit home runs with the Aaron Nesmith contract and getting Nimhard, and you just find the right pieces where you fit under the tax and it all works out and you're one game away from winning the title. And again, that's what the Grizzlies did. So I mess around with you. I think they're significantly worse, but as far as their ceiling is much lower. Maybe this is nitpicking. Their actual probably total win total. Yeah. They won 48 games last year.
Right. And how much,
I don't think
how many win shares is he responsible for?
Man, a lot. I would say he was the grown up in the room too. He was the leader. As far as I can tell from someone not in the locker room, as far as I can tell, he was the most dependable guy as far as leadership among the players. He was the vocal leader. I don't think that's necessarily what Ja Morant does. It's not necessarily what Jaren Jackson Jr. does. I think Desmond was the more mature leader for that team.
There is a leadership void.
Yeah, and so now it's like
Bane and losing Taylor Jenkins, because now it's a lot on his solo. Who goes 4-5 in 9 games. So hardly a large sample to judge him from. But you lose Desmond Bane. I think that's a fair concern with Memphis, which is why it's really hard to place when we eventually get to whether or not which teams make the playoffs. I have a really hard time figuring out the Memphis Grizzlies. Overall, back to the point you made about like the team building part of it. You trade Desmond Bane for 4 first-round picks. You do lower your ceiling. It would have been easier to say, like, let's keep Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. and just try to build like a really strong roster around them. Maybe that would have been an option. Eventually, though, if you come to the conclusion in Memphis that, you know what, we just can't be in the Ja Morant business anymore for whatever reason, you are forced to trade Ja, then at that point you're kind of entering a rebuild phase anyway. And if you're going to enter that rebuild phase or retool phase, however you want to frame it, it's nice to have 4 first-round picks from a Desmond Bane trade if you're entering that phase anyway.
Right. And the nervousness, though, that it gives me is like when you get those first-round picks coming in. And also, by the way, we can now say I think it's 2 first-round picks and Cedric Coward because they used 2 of the 4 already. So now we're down. Now we're down to 2. We have Cedric Coward, 2 picks and a swap. So like it's still, again, it was a huge return. But you also have sort of soft launched the idea of a teardown. You know, you've gone from
you've given the Grizzlies fans a little bit of a taste.
Because Zach Edey's hurt. Zach Edey had offseason ankle surgery. Jaren Jackson Jr. had turf toe surgery after signing his big extension. Zach is going to miss the beginning of the year, and we don't know how long he's going to miss. You have soft launched the idea of, hey, we started our season 5 and 6. And also now in November, our schedule is very hard, which in reality, the Grizzlies schedule in November is very, very hard. Then you've hit hey guys, it's Christmas and we're 7-12 or however many games you play. Like you start thinking, you know what? The best way to win a title in Memphis might be to skip this year and to get a lottery pick. And we're also going to root against the Suns because we might get their lottery pick too. And so I feel like you've soft launched the idea, and this might not even be a Ja Morant trade. This might be like, we'll try another gap year and retool that way. So like that again makes me nervous, where the flip side to that, the other side to that is, well, what if you had Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Ja Morant and actually spent around the edges and filled out? And because we've seen this team with those three guys, they were great. They were the 2 seed in consecutive seasons in the West. And they had a very competitive, the one playoff run they had where Steven Adams and Brandon Clark were healthy. They were very, very good. Lost a close series to the Warriors. So I don't know, but they made their decision, and maybe they were on the forefront of understanding, hey, all NBA teams are not going to pay this tax now. So we'll try to build out around our 2 guys, and the 2 guys we pick, Ja and Jaren.
We've already kind of done a lot of the individual player categories, but let's just jump right into our offseason preview part of this. Let's rank them. Let's rank these 5 teams, top to bottom. I'll give you my ranking, and you can just tell me where you disagree.
Okay.
I've got Houston number 1.
Yeah.
Sounds like we both agree on that.
Yeah, I agree on that.
And this is where it gets hard.
Yeah, this is where well you put in there in the show document the how many teams make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And I'm like 3 or 4, but I don't know which ones.
Right.
You know, right. Like probably 3 feel safe, but I don't know which ones. Yeah, but so, Houston, the safest pick, I think, to win the division.
I've got Houston at the top. I have New Orleans at the bottom. I've got positions 2, 3, and 4 pretty interchangeable. I ultimately settled on San Antonio, Memphis, Dallas in that order.
Yeah, that's
Not
fair.
Married to it.
I will say, and it might be the fan in me, even though I get feedback a lot from Grizzlies fans that apparently I'm the guy who's the most down on the Grizzlies most often. I'm a pragmatist.
I get the same thing from Heat fans.
Okay. I would probably lean the Grizzlies having a better season than the Spurs under proof of concept that I feel like I've seen Jaren and Ja and different permutations of players under the Grizzlies have a good defense and win regular season basketball games. Wemby's great. Wemby on-off numbers great. The Spurs have been humiliating without Wemby the last 2 years. And like, where's my proof of concept that it's going to be that much better? So I do think with Ty Jerome in there for the Grizzlies, with Noah and Jaren, with KCP, if he can bounce back. I mean, we didn't mention Jalen Wells. Jalen Wells, was a great find last year in the draft. Like, the Grizzlies have some depth and enough good pieces where I'm like, I'd be surprised if they didn't win 40 games, unless it was that situation where like the season starts badly and they pull the plug. And because of that, I feel like I would lean maybe the Grizzlies finishing second, but we're splitting hairs here.
I strongly considered it. Like
I
really considered it. And you know what? Honestly, if Taylor Jenkins were still the coach, and I'm not even saying that the firing was wrong, I just know him. I'm more comfortable with them. And they won a bunch of games, regular season games with Taylor Jenkins. I just don't know about the solo piece. And I
right. I mean,
and I put him in the middle for that.
Who's the better coach, Tomas Isalo or Mitch Johnson?
Right.
If anyone knows the answer, they're lying. No, and I don't know. What are those? I don't know what those guys do.
And so I was just like, yeah, Wembanyama, if he takes another leap and he's in the MVP race, they could win 43 or 44 games. Maybe Memphis drops off in a weird kind of, who's this head coach? We're trying to figure this out. Yeah. No Desmond Bane. They drop. But like I strongly considered the Grizzlies for that second spot. I didn't know what to make of Dallas, like we already talked about. So I kind of just have them sliding in under one of San Antonio and Memphis. But I think that's pretty safe. And then in terms of the teams that make the playoffs, I have Houston making it. I think is one of the top 3 or 4 seeds in the West. I got San Antonio and Memphis kind of firmly in my play-in mix.
Yeah.
And I have Dallas as a maybe they can make it to the play-in.
The more I think about the Spurs, I actually do think if that Wemby to the MVP level player happens, I think their ceiling is higher than the Grizzlies, where like, because I mean, De'Aaron Fox, very, very good basketball player. And I could see them, if they figured out how to play defense at all without Wemby or being better with Wemby, I could see them being like a mid-50 or like a 52 win. I don't feel like the Grizzlies are going to win 52 games this year. So I think the ceiling for the Spurs is higher because of Wemby and just the overall depth. There's so many bodies. There's fewer bodies on the Grizzlies I trust. I mean, you talked about if you could trade your third best player for 4 first-round picks. Yeah, you're right. People would do it. But now I look at the Grizzlies and I'm like, who's their third best player? Is their third best player the worst third best player in the NBA? Ooh. Name a team who has a worse third best player.
Like the Charlottes and the Washingtons.
Yeah, but even when you go to the Charlottes and the Washingtons, you're like, I don't know. You're like, who
is the third best player on the Grizzlies? Is it Brandon Clark?
If healthy, I mean, I think you'd probably argue Ty Jerome
It
now.
might be Ty Jerome now.
I think Grizzlies fans were arguing between Zach Edey and Jalen Wells.
If you could pick, we didn't even mention Jalen Wells yet, so I'm glad you at least mentioned him. If you could pick one player to pop as the third best player on Memphis this year, who would you pick?
Well, that's an interesting, just theoretical exercise. It seems like I would then take the worst player and have them become the third best player, and then everyone moves down to peg, right?
Right.
I'll say it because he's maybe my favorite guy. Vince Williams Jr. 2 years ago.
Let's go.
In 30 games, became the NBA podcaster's dream.
Yep.
Where everyone was like, have you seen Vince Williams Jr. on the Grizzlies?
Yeah, he walks so Tari Eason could run.
Yeah. So that guy is the make the second, third effort play, on each possession, the getting offensive rebounds, the ripping away, getting awesome steals. He was the guy every night. You're like, he guards Steph Curry tonight he's guarding Luka Doncic. The next night they put him on Durant. He was like the Grizzlies' primary defender, and he seemed like that fifth starter, perfect connective piece. And I do think, based on things I've heard, actual intel, I think they expected a lot from him last year. And he did not deliver. He had a hurt ankle and never got right. Him and Gigi Jackson both never got totally healthy last season, did nothing of note. And it was a big disappointment. And I think if Vince Williams Jr. could jump back up to the point where Grizzlies fans are clamoring for him to start like they were 2 years ago, when it was like, Vince Williams Jr. is better than Marcus Smart. Why isn't Vince Williams Jr. starting? Like that, if we could go back there, I think that all of a sudden you're not going to miss Desmond Bane as much, because maybe you can, in the aggregate, have KCP filling up. Maybe you can have more touches to Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja, and then you just make maybe a 5-man unit that makes more sense with Jalen Wells out there and with KCP out there and with Vince Williams Jr. out there. And then you're like, hey, wait, this team is top 3 in defense again, and Ja Morant's making, Ja and Jaren are going to the All-Star game, and then they're good again. I know that's what the team's hoping. I'm pretty sure that's what Zach Kleiman is hoping happens. So if Vince maybe can make that jump back up, that would fix a lot of the Grizzlies' woes.
Vince Williams is one of the most aesthetically fun players to watch in the league too, because he's so textbook with his defensive stance. Like he gets into that low crouch, arms wide like a Venus flytrap, or if that's the right plan.
He's also got crazy eyes, which help like a little bit. Yep. Like he's got that thing where like try me, and like he smiles when he plays too.
Yes.
Where like his energy was infectious, and like fans loved him, and I was like, this guy's amazing. And it was the only bright spot of 2 years ago when they tanked out and everybody was hurt or suspended.
I want Vince Williams to get in the mix for like a defensive player of the year thing, to the point where the Grizzlies are pushing it and they create some sort of like merchandise and products around Vince Williams Jr. And I'll purchase
I call him Bug because it feels like the name of a guy you maybe are nervous to be around, but also the initials are VW. So I call him Bug. Oh. I also called him the Machine because that was like, that's another Volkswagen thing. And so like I interchangeably scream the Machine or Bug whenever he does something awesome. And I like them both. So yeah, I'll just
Bug's
get that
good.
out there.
That's great. Last category here, players that we're going to think about differently a year from now. I have maybe my longest list out of any of the division previews I've done so far. We don't have to touch all of them, but because we've already talked about a bunch of them. But the number one guy, which was a no-brainer, I think we're going to be talking about Amen Thompson a little bit differently. Maybe not we as basketball podcasters, because we're already like, this guy's awesome.
I would say basketball podcasters now are like, who would you take in an all-time draft? It's like Amen Thompson or Charles Barkley. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, well, I mean, Amen could be anything. Charles Barkley was only the 12th best player of all time. Or
right. It could even be a boat.
Yeah.
It's with Amen Thompson, and I when all of NBA Twitter comes to the same conclusion and has the same opinion at the same time, my contrarian comes out, and I tend to be like, all right, I'm not going to go there with you, right? Like, I'm not going to be one of the NBA hipsters and just like buy in on this guy and be like, well, you know who's actually really good?
Yeah.
But every time I watch Amen Thompson play, I'm like, this guy could be the best player in the freaking league. Like,
it's so fun.
It's so fun. If he just pops in a way that without Jalen Green, it does clear the way for him to play a little bit, to just be on the ball a little bit more, experiment a little bit more. It felt very last year, your turn, my turn between Jalen Green and Amen Thompson. And it felt like at times Amen Thompson was almost too differential to Jalen Green. Like, he would like watch him do it and he'd be like, I know I can do that better, but because I'm your friend, I'm going to let you do this anyway for a little while. And now without Jalen Green there, and then Amen Thompson getting to have the ball in his hands more, and then also learn from Kevin Durant, which I think is the most underrated part of the Durant acquisition, in that you talk to anybody in the league, like the work ethic stuff with Durant is not just noise. Like, that is real. I remember covering Durant in Golden State, and it was him and Steph, last people on the court for another hour after practice ended. Like, that stuff's real. And for Amen Thompson to get to learn from that and learn from Kevin Durant, I think there's so much potential for him to reach an even higher ceiling now. If he starts to show that, I think we're talking about him as like, I don't know, no ceiling on Amen Thompson. All the hyperbole, I'm throwing it all out there. The other teammate from him, of his is Alperen Şengün. There's a lot of good stuff happening with Turkey right now. Kevin Durant is hyping him up. If Şengün just takes another leap too, we could be talking about him differently.
Yeah, I really struggle with this question just because there's so many like very established NBA players on these teams. Where like you look at the whole Mavs roster outside of Cooper Flagg, and you look at like maybe it is a guy like I dropped there like Brandon Williams, like, oh, that guy's good, or Max Christie actually became all right,
I have
or whatever.
him on my list. Yeah.
But like, I wonder if it's going to be one of those veterans on a team who has found either taken a step back or gotten even to like a higher spot. Like, I think of like, maybe we've talked a lot about De'Aaron Fox and how I have not as much excitement about him as I had, 2 years ago, where I'm like, hey man, you shot 27% from three. Like, what's that about? And it's like maybe it's him with Wemby becomes the pair. Maybe it's Ja Morant where people get scared of Ja Morant again.
Let's stick to De'Aaron Fox because I had him on my list.
I
think we're definitely going to be talking about him differently a year from now, because right now it's still very much like, we'll see.
Yeah.
We played 5 games together. It was kind of fun. It was kind of interesting, but we'll see. Next summer, we're going to know he's either a perfect fit with Wembanyama, and it makes sense to have him on this extension and just to play this out, or Dylan Harper and Steph Castle look like they should be the backcourt of the future, and we're talking about De'Aaron Fox. What can you get him on what could you get for him on the trade market right now? I think we're going to be I think our conversation about De'Aaron Fox right now is going to be very different next summer, one way or the other.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe it's what if Jordan Poole wins over everybody? What if he's the secret to the sauce?
Not me.
In New Orleans.
I see it. I know what's happening.
Okay.
If he has a great year, it's just going to be an off year next year.
I mean, like there's so many guys where you're like, if they put in a year, it just changes the framing around them. Zion Williamson, But yeah, I struggle with this one because then otherwise I just want to pick a young guy who was unestablished, who then you can be like, we can be talking differently. I mean, maybe what if it's like negative about like maybe the Jabari Smith situation because there's not a clear role for. It's like it's not as clear. He came off the bench, of course, last year when Amen Thompson joined the starting lineup, but 2 of their starters are gone from what they went the Rockets into the year with Green and Brooks being gone. And now, like, who steps up and fills that role? Is it Reed Shepherd? We're talking about it differently a year from now because he fills that role. I mean, but like you have Dorian Finney-Smith's there also, and like all these guys to take these minutes. Tari Eason is still there. Does like Jabari Smith Jr. get pushed out of even the rotation further? And then this contract where a lot of people are pretty cool with, it's like, oh, actually, we should try to move him for something that works out a little bit better. So maybe he's the guy we're talking about a lot differently a year from now.
Is there another level for Jaren Jackson Jr. to get to?
How good do you people want him to be?
This is sort of the conversation we have in Miami about Bam. It's like, okay, top 20 to 30 guy by any estimation.
Yeah.
All NBA, perennial All NBA candidate.
Man.
Defensive Player of the Year candidate every single year. And so I get this question all the time. Can Bam get better? So I'm asking you the same version of it. Can Jaren Jackson Jr. get better? He was awesome.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things. I won't do my entire Jaren Jackson Jr. spiel.
Okay.
Because we've been podcasting for a while. Yeah. But Jaren, yes, he could improve. Of course, I think the biggest thing, it's not rebounding. Sorry, guys. It's not even the fouling, frankly. I think it is. This has now become, I think, a legitimate issue that I worry about. It's his playoff performance. Playoffs are tricky to analyze because by nature, it's a small sample size. Mm-hmm. And so like any small sample size, you're like, this guy can't shoot in the playoffs. And then he has 2 games where he goes like 6 out of 8 from 3. And you're like, this guy's 48% in his career in the play. It's like it swings wildly. But Jaren has a run of horrific postseason basketball games, like stretched out over years on the offensive end, where maybe when the other team is able to game plan more specifically for him, he's not seeing the defense. He's going up against double teams. He's not passing the ball. He's not making his shots. And again, maybe it's just a small sample size, but this has become a thing that actually worries me. Where I'm like, that could definitely get better. He could always be a better passer. He's not a very good passer. He showed a lot of strides at it last year. Now, that being said, and I'm worried that's all people are going to hear, the joke I always make is, how good do you want Jaren to be? Like you said, he's a legitimate all defensive guy. Like he's in the defensive player of the year race every year. He's in the blocks leaders race every year, the stocks both. And oh, by the way, he was top 10 in the NBA in points per minute last year. He's scoring at the same per minute rate as Giannis and Luka Doncic. And you're telling me you have a 7-foot guy who scores like over 20 a game per minute at the top of the NBA, who's also all defense. And you're like, but why can't he rebound more like why can't he be more like Brandon Bass? You're like, why do you care? He's Andre Karolinko mixed with like Adrian Dantley. And you're like, well, I wish he fouled a little bit less. It's like, yeah, he'd be a Hall of Famer. Right. If he could rebound like Bam Adebayo, he'd be a Hall of Famer. Yep. And it's like, so that's my Jaren bit. Jaren might impact regular season winning more like as much as anybody in the NBA. Mm-hmm. I consider criticism of Jaren Jackson Jr. to be like, are you watching Grizzlies games? I don't just mean the one ESPN game a year where like Draymond baited him into that extra foul. Yeah, he fouls a lot, but it's still like, right. The foul stuff's a little bit overblown. I'm more concerned now about like, hey man, when teams are double teaming you in the postseason and they know your patented moves, can you still score over them? Because some of the playoff numbers have been pretty grisly. Not Grizzly, the mascot, the Grisly.
How many national TV games do the Grizzlies have this year?
10, I think.
That's a lot.
We're on NBC, baby. I don't think the Grizzlies have ever played on NBC. I mean, I don't know. Like there used to be, it used to be the Grizzlies would get 10, but like 6 were NBA TV. Now that there's not NBA TV, which new network is the black sheep?
It's either Peacock or Amazon. It's got to be one of the streaming services.
So I think it actually might be ESPN.
Ooh, because on ABC.
Because I think the Peacock ones and Amazon ones are exclusives.
Right.
I'm not sure what's going on with ESPN, but I don't know. But the Grizzlies do have 10. Yeah, they have 10 national TV games.
3 other players that I have just on this list, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. We mentioned Jalen Wells, but if Jalen Wells, Derek Lively II, or Trey Murphy pop, maybe we're talking about them a little bit differently. Derek Lively has literally like legit all defense potential. He could just be like the next center that we're having these kinds of conversations about. Jalen Wells was awesome as a rookie. Doesn't get talked about enough. I literally was like, will we talk about him at all? Because it still feels like we don't talk about him at all after his rookie year. Maybe we'll talk about him at all next summer. I
thought of a better answer. I'm going to go with Derek Queen. After next year, we could maybe everybody shuts up about the trade.
Or not.
Or not.
Like, he barely played. And the Pelicans sucked. And they could have had the boozer.
No, that's what everyone's talking. Everyone's already painting the worst case scenarios. I think we could change the thing. He's a perfect front court pairing with Zion. Mm-hmm. He's all rookie, beats out Cooper Flagg because of games played. or something for the rookie of the year.
Trey Murphy also on my list. He might legit have all-star potential.
I mean, for me, I'm already there with Trey Murphy.
Me too.
Trey Murphy is, if he was in a better situation, he could be an all-star.
He had that game winner against Boston last year. He was awesome.
His jump shots and his range is so deep. They're so lovely. I love watching them.
Keith Parrish, you can find him at the Fastbreak Breakfast, the Grits and Grinds podcast. Thanks so much, man. This was fun.
Thanks for having me, Wes.